Hello and welcome to SelfWork. I'm Dr. Margaret. Today, we're interviewing Dr. David Burns, a forefather of CBT. But first, a couple of messages from our sponsors. Do you wish you had a healthier diet? Let's be real. Eating healthy can be a hassle. There's shopping and meal prep, and especially if you're trying to manage depression or anxiety, what if there was an easier way and a way for you to be assured you're taking care of your family? Meet Sunbasket, a team of dietitians and chefs that design wholesome, nutritious, and delicious meal kits delivered to your door. Each week, you can choose from a brand new selection of quick and easy meal kit recipes with a wide variety of dietary options, plus dozens, literally dozens, of snacks, salads, breakfast items, and more. I discovered Sunbasket during the pandemic, and was that ever a game changer. Their meal kits are quick and easy, even if you're not a pro in the kitchen. Thanks to Sunbasket's commitment to clean ingredients and organic fresh produce, there's no easier way to eat your very best. So go to sunbasket.com/selfwork today to save $120 across your first 4 deliveries. That's sunbasket.com/selfwork to save $120 across your first 4 deliveries, plus free shipping on your first order. This is SelfWork, and I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. At SelfWork, we discuss psychological and emotional issues and what you can do about them, whether that's learning self-acceptance, taking action, or seeking therapy or treatment. 8 years ago, I extended the walls of my practice to reach those of you who might already be knowledgeable about mental health treatment, but also to those of you who might say you'd never darken the door of a therapist. And yet, you are here. I'll answer your questions while I invite you to take a few minutes for your own self-work.
I'd go to a psychoanalyst and they'd say, how was the session? I'd say, well, I don't think it was very good because the patient just cried and sobbed and was angry the whole session and was just saying how worthless their life was and how I wasn't helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the analyst would say, oh, what a great session.
Welcome to this week's edition of SelfWork. For the second time this year, I received a request to interview one of the great researchers of our time. Last month, it was Harville Hendricks, a huge name in couples therapy, and this week, it's Dr. David Burns. He's considered one of the forefathers of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and is a renowned psychiatrist with 40 plus years of mental health care expertise. His story is funny, it's fascinating, and he really bucked the tide. He's the best-selling author of the books Feeling Good and Feeling Great, which have sold over 7 million copies worldwide. And even at age 82, which he is now, he just secured $8 million in seed funding for his new mental health venture, the Feeling Great app, and that's what he's here to talk with us about. The app provides tools and resources to tackle negative thoughts you might have and revert them to positive emotions, offering a more effective approach to your own mental health management. And actually, one of the fascinating stats about this app, that users of it, on average, reported a 55% reduction in depressive feelings and similar reductions in feelings of anger, guilt, hopelessness, and loneliness. If you want something to do about it, this is the app for you. Before we go on, let's hear from BetterHelp. The most common problem I hear from those seeking therapy is how hard it is to find a therapist, how long it takes, how vulnerable you feel asking around for names. BetterHelp solves those problems. After you make the first contact, their standard is to offer names of therapists to you in less than 2 days, and you can talk to them in a first session to see if it's a good fit. If so, you're on your way. But if not, rather than going through something awkward, you simply let BetterHelp know, and they'll ask what it was you didn't like and find someone else for you. You can text, chat, or talk virtually. All of those avenues are open to you. I'm a therapist because I got good therapy. I'd had no idea how much I could benefit from it, but I knew I wasn't seeing myself or my world clearly. Here's BetterHelp's offer for SelfWork listeners. 10% off your first month of sessions if you use this link, BetterHelp.com/selfwork. They say the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago, but the next best is today. It's never too late to reach out and get help. BetterHelp.com/selfwork. So let's hear from Dr. David Burns. so I've known about you for about 35 years now. And when your folks contacted me and said that you'd like to be on SelfWork, I was so pleased and honored and excited to meet you. I mean, everybody in
Likewise,
psychology
yes.
knows who you are.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about your app. I looked at it, the Feeling Great app, and I'm so curious about so many things. I talked to your colleague, David Spiegel, several months ago from Stanford, and he said that, he has started an app, a hypnosis app or a self-hypnosis app. And what he said to me, and I wondered if you felt similarly, that, he realizes he can't teach many more people hypnosis. And so he said, I really want my work to spread further and to be something that I feel like I'm leaving a lasting imprint on the mental health world. Do you feel that way?
Well, very, very much so. When I was young, a psychiatric resident, finished my residency at Penn, and I went into psychiatry because I just want to be helpful to people, and I never really learned anything during my residency that helped anyone very much. You could prescribe drugs for people who were severely psychotic, and they helped somewhat. But schizophrenia, we don't know the cause, and we don't have an effective treatment. But if someone's depressed or anxious, there was just a lot of non-specific talk. We didn't measure anything. We didn't expect people to get better, and they didn't, and no one seemed concerned about it.
Wow.
And
now, were you trained in the psychoanalytic model?
Well, yeah, that was, 1 year I had two supervisors. They were both presidents of the two competing psychoanalytic associate groups in Philadelphia.
I see.
And it was nutty. And they just said, just don't speak during sessions. And you can say, if you want to say something, just say, tell me more. And you can say it twice a session.
I agree with you.
But no more. And the patients would just cry and be angry. And they would say things like, oh, you're not helping me. And I'd tell my supervisor, and they'd say, well, ask them if you remind them of their father. So the next session, I would say, do I remind you of your father? And they'd say, well, not particularly, but you're not helping me. And then I'd say, tell me more. And now I used my two loud sentences, and I wasn't allowed to speak the rest of the session. And so finally, I went to Beck's weekly seminars, not expecting much.
That's Aaron Beck. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because cognitive therapy was just new, and there were probably a dozen of us in the world at most.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked it. It wasn't perfect, but it was there were techniques you could use that could be helpful to people, and you were measuring things with the depression test and see if your patients were getting better. And so I left academics. I had a grant from the federal government to develop a brain serotonin research laboratory at the medical school.
Okay.
And I sent the money back because we had done a study that we published in the top psychiatry journal in 1975 that was pretty much proof that the chemical imbalance theory of depression was not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want to spend my life studying something that wasn't true and would never pay off in terms of helping anyone.
How do you think that chemical imbalance wrong theory, that it was not correct, and the studies have shown it to not be correct, but it caught on like wildfire? I mean, I was in graduate school from 1987 to 92, finished my PhD in 92, and it was what we were taught. And it was a decade and more after that study that came out.
Well, one of my mentors during I did a 2 or 3 year postdoctoral research fellowship after my residency, a depression research fellowship at Penn. And my mentor, whose name I won't mention, was one of the four people who developed the field of biological psychiatry.
Okay.
And he had lots of grants, and he tested drugs for drug companies, and I think made a lot of extra income that way, tremendous amount probably. And I said to him, why are we studying this serotonin theory, this chemical imbalance theory, when our research has shown that it isn't valid, and that loading people up on, incredibly high levels of brain serotonin, we've published that has no effect whatsoever on mood. And he says, don't rock the boat, David. You've won awards for your research. You're already known worldwide. And you've got a great career ahead of you in academics. You'll get tremendous grant money, and I can show you how to test drugs for drug companies and make a ton of money. And I said, well, that doesn't appeal to me. What you're saying there? I don't want to study something that doesn't have any chance of being true or helpful. But there's a lot of pressure like that.
I would love to hear when you came out with, your own cognitive behavioral techniques. How were they received?
Well, that's not an easy question to answer, because I haven't done a lot of research on it. But I would say for me, it's been a kind of an uphill slog.
Okay.
And I think other people who have developed new approaches. Well, I initially I did well, because I put cognitive therapy on the map worldwide.
Right,
when my book Feeling Good came out, there, it was totally unknown, and the few people who knew about cognitive therapy were just convinced it was quackery. And then, and that book, eventually caught on. It was slow at first. The publishers wouldn't support it. The president of the company that published it said it had no commercial potential, and that they told me the day it was released that they weren't going to be able to support it with any kind of marketing or anything like that. And, but eventually, it caught on, and after 8 years of my slogging around on my own trying to get it on some media appearances,
wow,
yeah, and then it went. I finally got on the old Phil Donahue show in 1988,
I remember.
And then within 5 minutes at the end of the show, it went to the number 1 or number 2 position in all of the bestseller lists.
Wow,
but it took a long time to get the word out. But one of the problems really is that in the early days, I really loved learning from Aaron Beck. But he wrote the foreword for Feeling Good, and as long as it was not popular, he thought it was wonderful. And then at a certain point, I started finally, from my own efforts, I got onto a local AM Philadelphia television show, or Good Morning or whatever, and things like that. So it was a good thing. But I have kind of gone more for the general public, I would say, than for the academics. Although I've tried to reach out to academics with workshops, for the last 30 years, I've probably 50,000 mental health professionals have come to my workshops. But the reason I developed an app is because it's so hard for mental health professionals to learn Team CBT. It's a very sophisticated approach, and at any rate, I don't know the answer to your question. I so many things that I've developed are highly controversial, and people either love me or hate me. For example, one thing is that when I work with people, there's something we used to call the cognitive click, and it's like, say, someone's depressed and they're saying, probably people listening to the show, I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, I'm defective, I'm a failure, I should be better than I am, I shouldn't be so shy and awkward in public situations, there must be something wrong with me.
Sure.
And it comes to a point, often when I'm using this technique called externalization of voices, with the acceptance paradox and counterattack. And it's a way that you can learn to do battle with your own negative thoughts. They have a kind of aha experience, and their feelings instantly disappear, negative feelings. And that's what recovery is. That's feeling better.
Yes.
And then you got to do relapse prevention training. But for me, when I work with people, the recovery almost always comes in a flash, like like an aha moment. And
you can't quite see it. You can't quite see things the same way anymore. It's like there's been a shift in your lens.
Yeah. Your whole world changes. And a lot of people don't like hearing that people can recover really fast. They get angry because they're used to what I was told is that depression builds over years and takes years of treatment. But people can't believe this is possible. That's why I publish them on my Feeling Good podcast, so people can hear the actual real thing happening. But a lot of people, that's a message of hope that there are techniques you can learn that can help you change the way you think and feel. But sometimes people don't believe it. They think I'm a con artist or something like that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I would say it's I don't know. A lot of people are excited, and a lot of people, kind of get rebuffed. For example, I treated a woman at Stanford who had 20 years of severe OCD with a germ phobia, like what Howard Hughes had, and she'd take showers for 2 hours, and she was afraid of touching door handles and that type of thing. But a lovely woman, and so I treated her live in front of my weekly training group at Stanford with students. I always treat people in front of live audience.
Okay,
and she'd been asking, if I could treat her OCD. So I did some of the initial stuff, the empathy and the agenda setting and the paradoxical, stuff, eliminating her resistance and seeing if she was willing to do what she had to do to overcome it. And then I said, if you're ready now, we can take the whole group into the women's bathroom and we can touch the toilet seats. And that freaked her out, and she said, "Well, I'd like to see you do it." And there were about 30 students watching us, so I started putting my hands all over the toilet seats, and then she did it. And I said, "How anxious are you right now?" She said, 120%. Yeah. And I said, that's not good enough. We got to get you up to 200%. So let's go out and we'll leave the building, go out in front of the building. And I want you to touch all the doorknobs on the way. And she just, oh no, do I have to do this? So yes, you do have to do this.
So let's take a break and we'll be back in just a moment. Are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? If you're a woman, you are definitely not alone. There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living rent-free in our environment right now, in our food, our water, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, our skincare, and they all mess with our hormones. Then there's the natural hormonal changes our bodies go through, perimenopause, menopause, and while it's a natural process, it doesn't mean we don't suffer through it. Certainly perimenopause especially threw me for a loop far before I was expecting it. The good news is that we don't have to suffer through any of it anymore because now we have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms in women of all ages. In fact, Hormone Harmony has become a phenomenon. Women cannot stop talking about it on social media. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds. That's 50 orders in the time it takes you to listen to SelfWork. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code SelfWork at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code SelfWork for 15% off your first order today.
And we all went out in front of the building. There was this empty garbage can without a top on it. It was all grimy inside, like with kind of grease and crap all over the edges. Mm-hmm. So I said, now I want you to reach in here with your hands, and they'll get all this black stuff on them, and then rub it all over your face. And she says, no, if I even put my hands in there, I'm going to vomit. I said, good, put your hands in there and vomit on your hands and get them all grubby and then rub it on your face. and she said, I can't do that. And I said, oh, you can do that because you have two arms and you can lift them up and put them in. And that's what I'm asking you to do right now. And she said, oh, if you think it's so easy, I'd like to see you do it. So I said, absolutely. So I put my hands in and rubbed all over my face like this. And then she said, well, I'm going to do it too. And then she did it. And one of the students had their iPhone and videoed this. It was like a 30-second thing. And she pulled her hands out and rubbed them all over her face. And all the students started cheering. And then we went back in and sat down in the seminar room where we had started out. And she was sobbing. And I said, Sarah, what are you crying about? And she said, because you just cured my OCD and I can't believe it. I'm not afraid.
Wow.
It was 200% and I'm zero right now. And then I had her come on a podcast, sometime maybe 6 months later. And she was just really lovely and described her experience. Because I thought this would be an inspiration to people. And then someone wrote me an email with just 2 words in it, F you.
Wow.
Whatever, doctor, because you're a fraud, and that didn't happen. That can't happen.
This is some kind of circus show that you're putting on. Yeah. Wow.
So but I think it's exciting that we have new methods that can work rapidly. That if I had a daughter who was struggling with depression and somebody could make her depression disappear in a single 2-hour therapy session, I would kiss that person's feet.
Sure, of course.
I'd go to a psychoanalyst and say, how was the session? I'd say, well, I don't think it was very good because the patient just cried and sobbed and was angry the whole session and was just saying how worthless their life was and how I wasn't helping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the analyst would say, oh, what a great session. I say, well, how could that be a great session?
As if catharsis or some kind on their self.
Yeah, they got all their anger out. They got all their depression out. And then I'd say, well, at what point does this turn into joy? Like, now, will they recover now? Will they be happy next week? And they would never answer that question.
Right. So what?
So the point was, no one was measuring anything. And you can't know how accurate you are without measurement. So it just, to me, and I'm going to say something people aren't going to like, but I think it's kind of fraudulent, a lot of what goes on as therapy. It's not effective. The goal of therapy should be like the goal of treating pneumonia with penicillin. Kill those bacteria, make the symptoms disappear as fast as possible.
Yeah, I tell my clients all the time, it's my job to do myself out of a job. And if I don't do it, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, right.
I must admit, I haven't had too many one-session wonders. So how would you suggest that people use this app? How do you think it's best used?
Well, we're trying to find that out, but we just did an analysis of like 1,800 commercial users of the app. And there's 2 parts to the app. There's this AI chatbot that we've trained to do what I do in a session. Mm-hmm. And it has some evolution to go yet, but it's pretty good. And then we have these self-paced classes and lessons, which is me just talking to people, explaining things to them and asking them to do exercises to see if you got this. But we were kind of pushing people into the chat bot, the AI chat bot. Mm-hmm. And it goes right into, is there something bothering you that I could work with you? Let's measure.
Yeah, I did it a little bit, the chat part.
Oh yeah. You see how that works. And then we looked at their first experience with the chatbot, and there was a like in those 7 different negative feelings, in all of them, there was a 60% reduction the first time they sat
Yes.
down with an
Yes.
hour
And,
to.
that was one of the questions I had for you is that I actually just, wasn't yesterday, it was day before yesterday. I had um, a conversation with someone that, was putting something out in a digital form, and she and I were talking about this new research on AI that I mean, whether or not therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists or social workers, whatever like it is having these significant results. And to me, it's so important because we have such a lack of mental health providers, that,
Yeah.
and with mental health issues growing, suicidality growing, everything, that it's so, I mean, you can say, well, you're just talking to a robot, but not really. You're talking to a, you're talking to AI about, or someone, I don't know what even the term, the chat bot, I guess, that you're trained, and they're trained in ways to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, just to take a slight departure from you on one point, I think we've proven that generative AI on its own will not be therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We measured its efficacy. It's how empathic is it compared with humans,
Right.
and we proved that even the app we had before AI was dramatically more empathic than humans, than the people
Really?
reported. Because
Okay.
there was a program on 60 Minutes, and they were saying a digital device will never be able to replace human empathy, and that's the healing element.
Right.
And we prove that empathy is not the healing element, and that it's probably humans that can't do good empathy, not the bot. Even at that point, was getting almost perfect scores from
So what
users on
was the
farm.
factor that was most healing?
Well, we're coming out with a paper on that. I've been writing this week. The title of the paper is going to be "Was Epictetus Right?" Epictetus said that negative thoughts cause depression 2,000 years ago, and no one's been able to prove that. They've been arguing about this for centuries, really, and so we finally tested it in over 2,000 app users, and have the first proof that negative thoughts do cause negative feelings, and that when you change the belief in negative thoughts, you get an immediate drop in negative feelings.
Okay, so let me ask you one more question. That's kind of it's my curiosity. How do you account for the factor of the people that would choose to use an app might be different than someone else? Their depression might be different. They might be different.
Sure. Every population is biased. There's no such thing as an unbiased population.
Right.
And so if you're, treating people with antidepressants, you're only treating people who are willing to take an antidepressant, and that'll be a bit of a biased population.
Sure, of course.
All we can do is create something terrific and offer it to humanity. Mm-hmm. But the app is not expensive, and it's $99 for a year. And if anyone can't afford it,
it's a hell of a lot cheaper than therapy.
Well, yeah, and then we say if you can't afford it, just contact us and we'll give it to you for free. We will not turn anyone away, on that basis. But yes, I guess I'm more concerned with people who are willing to give the app a try. You can take a free ride on it if anyone's listening to the show, and go to feelinggreat.com and you can take a free ride and then see what you think. But our hope is that we can get enough publicity, like through your graciousness of having me on your show, to get people to say, go and check it out and see what you think, and get the world using it. And hopefully a lot of people who are hurting wouldn't mind taking a day and make a huge dent in those feelings of low self-esteem and begin to experience some some joy. And I don't know if that's a good answer to your question.
It's a wonderful answer. So I'm just very excited about this app for you. I'm both a little shocked, but also absolutely delighted that if people can't afford it, you're going to give it to them for free. And I hope people use that, and I'm sure they will, with the gratitude that it deserves.
When I started out my career, and I wrote about this guy in my first book, Feeling Good. Sterling Morey was this insecure medical student from London who came to Philadelphia for a month for a psychiatric rotation. Because Beck invited him, but Beck forgot that he invited him. and he showed up at the Beck Center. Beck was on the 5th floor of the Gerard Bank building. My office was on the 3rd floor. And Beck called, said, "We've got this guy who we promised a month of training, but we don't have anything for him." So I told him he could sit in with you on your patients for a month. And that he'll think that's good training. And I was shocked. I said, "These patients are paying me for therapy. They won't want some medical student, watching the sessions."
Right.
But I didn't want to let Beck down. I said, "Well, he could sit in on 2 sessions maybe, but I can't promise more."
Yeah.
It depends on how the patients take to him. And so, 3 minutes later, here was Sterling Morey in my office for his month of training. And I had a very psychotic student who had been writing death on his dormitory door at Penn.
Okay.
And he was frightening the other students. He was paranoid, and he thought his sexual thoughts were being broadcast all around the university. Okay. And he was angry and enraged, and he thought he had seen John the Baptist on the way to the office, and there was a conspiracy preventing him from seeing John the Baptist. And I said, and Sterling was sitting there, and I promised Sterling I wouldn't put him under any pressure. I said, "Sterling, what would be the British approach here?" Mm-hmm. And Sterling looks like his eyes started spinning in his sockets. He was so scared. And then he leaned forward to this fellow and he said, "Well, Jim, if you saw John the Baptist this morning, I'd really want to find out what he was telling you." He said he was giving you secrets about the spiritual future of the human race. In England, we're very, very interested in spiritual things. And the young man who's so used to, having people ignore him, he
exactly.
said, do you really want to know? And Sterling said, "I really want to know. Yes. What did he tell you?" And all of a sudden they were engaged in this intense dialogue, and I was completely excluded. And we went to the end of the session, and the fellow turned to me and says, "Dr. Burns, this is by far the best session I've ever had." And poor Sterling, he was just, he didn't think anything of himself, but he had beautiful empathy skills.
Yes, exactly what I was thinking. That's empathy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I said, "I've got to learn from this guy. I know technical skills, but he's got something I need." Mm-hmm. And so he sat in with me. I was seeing like 70 hours a week of patients, and he sat in for every one of them for a month. Wow. But here was a young guy, untrained, who had that.
Maybe that's what we're talking about, that the training what screws it up.
Well, wherever it comes from, the people with the big degrees and the famous careers and whatever maybe aren't always as nice as we think and as effective as we think. And maybe something as humble as AI can touch the hearts of people who were hurting and help change their lives.
I've learned from you. I've learned from Sterling.
Thank you. Yeah,
I've learned.
Well, it's been an honor to be on your show and to talk to you. And there's just so much pain. It just seems like there's more and more loneliness and despair and anxiety and unhappiness all the time. And I'm just glad that we're developing some new tools to maybe relieve some of that suffering.
As I said earlier, it is an honor to have you on, and I hope that SelfWork listeners will look at the app and feeling great. And I looked at it this morning, and I'm going to download it myself. And so I have it, to show my patients. And
Oh, great.
I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Dr. David Burns. Thank you very, very much for being here.
Okay, thank you. Have a good one. And all of you, thank you for listening today. We both really appreciate having this chance to dialogue with you a little bit.
You bet. We're in our 9th year of SelfWork, which is so hard to believe. And I want to thank my fantastic team, John Crowley of Loudmouth Studio, whose audio and video expertise I count on every week, as well as his very dry humor. And Christine Mathias, my communications manager, who schedules all the guests and keeps me as organized as possible. Herding cats, I think, is the phrase she often uses. And of course, I want to thank all of you who listen and let me know what you want or need to hear. I wish I could meet every one of you. So thanks for being here today. Please take very good care of yourself, your family, and your loved ones. I'm Dr. Margaret, and this has been SelfWork.